Doomer-Nomics, the Doomers, the economics of the Doomers. Why the Boomers and the Gen X and the Great Generation they had it easier, and why the people who are growing up now, why are they the Doomers? This is my take on what's going on, and my view is that it's about real estate. I mean, I'll exclude myself from this, really. I guess I'm boomer, so I did have it easier. And what happened with me is my Finnish grandparents, they came to the USA back in the 1920s, and they both worked. My grandmother was worked as a maid cleaning houses, and my grandfather worked as a carpenter. He was a union carpenter, basically. And what they did is they saved money, and they bought a piece of land here in Berkeley for well below $10,000, probably like $6,000 or $7,000 or so. And they built a house on it, and they lived in it, and they owned it, and they never had a mortgage. And part of that was the Finns who came here they were carpenters. People in Finland is covered with wood. So my grandfather was very handy with a saw. And they helped each other, and they built that house. But the point is, they weren't rich people. But they were considered poor when they were here, but they're still able to own a house. And as they got older, they had spending money left over. They had saved. And they had a child as my mother, and they had money left over, and they did trips. They went to Finland, back when you had to be on a boat and be on a cruise ship to go to Finland. So they had money left over because it was cheaper, because housing was cheaper. They didn't blow all their money in housing, but these days things are a little different. And, I found this. This is a typical. This is the first thing that came up. This is what housing is in Berkeley. Here you could see some very expensive, very small condos for all over $500,000. The possibility of working, as a maid or as a carpenter, and doing this is much more difficult. I would say almost impossible. I work in tech, and I see a lot of people, and a lot of them are making, well north of $100,000, and they're renting, or they have crazy high mortgages. So either they're renting, or they're house poor. All their money's going into housing. People are making more money relative to the consumer price index, but they're poor because housing is gobbling it up. Let me go to the next slide here. This is the Fred chart. It's for California. And what you see up to 1985, wages and housing were tracking pretty closely. So for the median wage earner, the cost of buying a house would have taken about the same percentage of their paycheck as someone from a previous generation. I mean, this is how it should be. Housing is used by people who have jobs, so the value of a housing should roughly be proportional to wages. It's the whole point of housing, really, that young people should be able to use their wages to purchase a house. But after 1985, look what happens. Housing prices relative to wages climb and climb. And they dip briefly following the 2008 crash, but relative to wages, they get nowhere near the level they were at 1984, even after the dip following 2008 crash. After that crash, the housing prices, they've come back just with a vengeance, basically. So now in California, it's relatively relative to somebody like back in the 80s or 70s, it's about 4 times as expensive to purchase a house relative to the median income. So what happened? What happened? I don't think this is too controversial, but partially what happened was lower interest rates. That lower interest rates promote speculation in housing. That the lower rates, that more people go in the market and they drive up prices. And they do help, lower rates, they do help purchasing house, but they help purchasing house for everybody. And but still, I mean, even though lower rates help you buy a house a little bit, eventually you still have to pay the principal off anyway. So even at 0% interest, for $1 million house, eventually you got to come up with $1 million. You don't escape that. And I think what we saw in 2008 is that if housing prices go down, that becomes a problem for banks. That these houses are collateral for loans, many with small down payments. And if the value of those loans drops, less the value of the loan balance, and the loan goes underwater. And if the borrower defaults, then the bank will be able to recover their money. And, and I think this is a little bit political, but, that's the thing that politicians decided would not happen. That the public policy has been put in place to maintain housing prices, to save banks and preserve property tax revenue. Also because cities earn property tax based on the value of houses. So if housing prices go down, then property taxes go down. But no, that's not going to happen. So this is where we are now. We have cities filled with homeless, and we have constructions of, expensive, unaffordable condominiums. I'm fine, thanks to my grandparents. But I think anybody younger now who's trying to purchase a house, it's crazy. There's no point. And this is the basis of a lot of things, how the price of real estate and the cost of rent, it's all built on that, and the way, if we just go by the graph, back to this thing here, the later you were born, the worse it is. So, you could think, it wasn't so bad. Like 80s, maybe it wasn't so bad. It was starting to go bad, but maybe nobody knew. But you go past, the 2000s and 2010s, it's all worse. However younger you have. Every younger person has it harder than every older person. And it's due to this real estate bubble. That's what's going on. Thank you.